Anytime you try to look out for black folk, they think you're preaching hate. And so, but I don't care what they think about me. I don't want you to go out and think I'm preaching hate. But I want you to start developing some things. And everything I say to you this morning is to break that trick, that game that you're locked into. And in my Powernomics book, I call this Powernomics. Powernomics means learning how to use social economic judo. That's what I'm saying? And I want you to learn how to start flipping the script. We're going to come out of this condition because time is running out. I don't prophesy something's going to happen in the future. I'll tell you the date, the time, and the place it's going to happen. And I haven't missed one yet. Now, your time is running out on us. You're now a permanent underclass. In about another 7 or 8 years, right in the early 20s, only 25% of the people working today would be necessary to even have a job. Only 25% who are working, of those working today will be working by the year 2021. That's the first thing. Second thing is that probably about somewhere between about 40 to 50% of all the black people that were alive in 1998 are going to be dead. And whether you live in Africa, the Caribbean, or America, you're going to die. You're going to die either as a direct or an indirect result of terrorism or natural disasters or man-made catastrophes. Why? Because black folk don't own and control the vital resources necessary to take care of yourselves. There are certain things that you have to do, be able to be independent, to feed yourself, clothe yourself, have food and water. There are 4 things you have to be able to survive. Food, water, energy, and medicine. We control none of those things. I didn't say have access to go to somebody else's drugstore. We don't understand the game of survivorship that's coming. And I want to make sure you write that down in your book. It's coming. And that's why you're going to have major food shortages going across this country, in the United States, and water shortages. They're going to throw everything out of sync. And shortage is going to throw it out of sync. And black folk don't own any grocery stores. You don't own any drug stores. You don't control any water, food. It's coming. So today I want you to understand the nature of what we're going to be up against. And when the people ask me, Dr. Anderson, why is it that we're always on the bottom? Well, you're on there for a very specific reason. First is because we don't understand that game, and it's been a game ever since the founding of the country. And we never understood the game. And the game is that the major societies in this country have ways of excluding you intentionally without you knowing it. They use very broad, and they've used very broad and ambiguous terms to give the pretense that you include, and inclusion, at the same time you're being excluded. They use code words to make sure that you're never getting, your conditions will never change. And let's start going through it and show you what I mean. Let's go back to the Constitution as an example. The Articles of Confederation that were put up in the 1600s said very specifically that they're going to start a slavery system in the United States. And they want to figure out which population they're going to use, but I think they've always been messing around with the black population. And in 1650, they started trying to work around enslaved black folk. And the population of whites coming in the country, pouring into the country. By 1750, the population of this country for black folk were up to 35%. White folks had already gotten alarm about that. And so back in the 1600s, about 1642, as an example, going back to show you, they started passing laws to try to restrict the number of blacks coming into this country. Why? Because they wanted you to be a minority. And that's why, and later on, when they drew up the Constitution, the first act in the Constitution was what they call the first naturalization and immigration law. That says there's a zero quota on blacks coming into the country, but it'll be a white country for white Europeans only. Now, in the Constitution, here's how the coding started working. The coding came up, they says, all the people. Every time the white society says all the people, we the people, the American people, they are not talking about you. You are the people to be excluded. That's why in the Constitution, there's no place in the Constitution, not in one instance, does it ever mention the word slave. Never does it include the word slavery. Whenever they want to start talking about black folk in the Constitution starting out in the 1600s, 1700s, what they said is they use very broad and ambiguous terms to relate to black folk. Like those who are indebted, those who are abundant, those that species of property. To make sure that what they're deciding, and they use this when they met to form the Constitution in Philadelphia in 1779, when all the so-called founding fathers got together, what they said is this: let's not taint this document we're getting ready to create called the Constitution. Let's not taint it talking about slavery or about slaves. We're getting ready to screw over some people, but we don't want anybody to know about it. We want to leave no fingerprints. No fingerprints should be left on what we're getting ready to do. This is fact. For the first 3 days in the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, they kept the doors locked while they all debated whether or not slave and slavery should show up in the Constitution, and what terms they should use. And they went out of their way to say that nobody ought to use those terms. We would use very broad and ambiguous terms. So when Thomas Jefferson rewrote the Constitution, he had to write it 3 times to make sure that there was nothing left in there, no fingerprints left of what was going to happen to a certain group of people. And so when you read the Constitution, it says, we the people, you just had it. All the people, you just had it. When the Constitution says that all men are created equal, they weren't talking about you. Because at the same time the Constitution said all the people are equal. They had already classified in the Constitution that you would be a 3/5 of a human being. They weren't talking about you, but somehow my people never understand that. They talk about the Constitution, what they call the founding fathers. The founding fathers knew the game. They set that up in the Constitution so that they can always track that with no fingerprints. When they said in the Constitution, for instance, that all people are created equal, they've been endowed by their God to have inalienable rights. To what? To life, liberty, and what? No, that's what it got you again. It wasn't for the pursuit of happiness. It was pursuit of property. They switched on you. Initially it started out being, it was supposed to be the pursuit of property. Nobody on this earth got past the 3rd grade with think people, white folk, that foolish to come across the oceans in 3 months and sailing on a boat with barely enough food and water to live and come to the United States looking for happiness. But my people don't understand that. They go read, oh yeah, we're here for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. No, it was life, liberty, and pursuit of property, because the Constitution laid out black folk as property. 3/5 of a human being, you were classified as property, equal to an animal, a field animal, a beast of the field. That was the purpose of it. And black folk were set out on that. Then later on, as you got into as the Constitution moved through and was ratified in 1789, and in 1790 they put in the whole thing about immigration. And what they want to do was bring in whites then. And they came in with a concept that you all talk about now and hear about, called the American Dream. What is the American Dream? All blacks are, well, one day we're going to be a part of America. You can't be a part of the American Dream. You were the dream. Whites were coming to this country looking for 2 things that made up the American dream: free Indian land and free black labor. That is the American dream. And every day on the Fox channel and then the politics, everybody talking about the American dream. I want to be a part of the American dream. And blacks sit there and go along like, yeah, I sure like to get that myself too. You it. And see, we start talking about the American dream. You can't get the American dream because you were it. And all the people since that time, since the 1790s, been coming to this country looking for the American dream. But it was only for Europeans. And secondly, they want to make sure that you stayed a minority and that you would always be outnumbered 9 to 1. And then and the population hit 35%, they pushed it all the way back down to 9%, now it's up to about 12.3%. But black folk, we look at these things, let it go down, that we're looking for the American dream. So all these immigrants coming to America, what are they coming here for? For the American dream. Now, they can no longer get the land they used to get. Because when whites came into the country, they got free land based on how many slaves they owned. On that, what they call a headship right, every white could pick up 640 acres of land for every slave he owned. Free. 640 acres. Then they had head rights. And they also had land grants. They owned as much land as far as they could see. And now when you go out up in the West and all around this country, you see whites own these vast tracts of land. 1,000 acres, 20,000 acres of land. They didn't pay for that land. It was unearned benefits. Wall Street was set up based on unearned benefits. Because you see, up until the end of slavery, the primary generator of wealth in America was the back of a slave. When slavery ended in the 1860s, everything flipped over and went to Wall Street. And Wall Street came up with a new concept of saying that became a real-life monopoly game. And instead of basing every wealth building on the back of a slave, wealth building began to be based on what we call capitalism. In 1492, when Columbus was supposed to discover America. At that time, he came here really not looking for new land. He came here looking for drugs, trying to get to the Far East. And he took some slaves back with him to Europe. And once they got there, he picked up the doctrines that were put in place way back in 1444. Back in 1444, Henry the Navigator had gone around the coast of Africa. He had found about 16 black Africans and brought them back and gave them to the Pope. Gave them to the Pope in the Catholic Church. The Pope used those black slaves very effectively as servants. Then in about 1488, Pope Anderson came out with an edict says we should need some households, some labor, some free labor. So let's use blacks for it. So when Columbus discovered America in 1492 and went back to Europe, and Europe was a depressed economy, overridden with crime, famine, diseases, and Europe was down in the toilet. And Columbus came back and said, I found all this land. And so a race started. They said, let's go over there and try to rebuild that country. When they started pulling all those European countries together, nine countries got together, they started a race to get to the United States and build a country. And that's when capitalism started. We never had capitalism before. Before that was called mercantilism. Capitalism, and I want you all to understand, capitalism is based on owning the land, the tools, and the resources, and using other people's labor to make wealth. That's capitalism. It started in Portugal with the Catholic Church, and it spread in England, finally took it over. We don't understand capitalism. We've never understood capitalism as black folk because we were always the capital. We were never had a chance to practice capitalism because we were the capital. Whites wanted, and what they said is that we got to control these blacks. That's why when they started the colony, the Georgia colony, they mandated in the state statutes that every white coming into the country, you had to have 4 whites for every one black, you had to have 1 white for every 4 black slaves to manage and control them. They started a thing called patty rollers, which means that every white has to be armed and go out and survey and watch the roads. They put down any possible slave revolts. To make sure no blacks have slave revolts or revolt or do anything to hurt whites. That was the point of the Second Amendment in the Constitution, what you all call gun control now. And started back in about 1643, the first time they implemented that was in Virginia, which says now that we got blacks as slaves, no black can carry a tool, weapon, or mirror. We got them enslaved. They've kept blacks enslaved, but not having to give them weapons. And even in the Second Amendment, when Jim Crow segregation came into effect, most of the southern states passed laws saying blacks could not own weapons. That's why you see one of these old movies of blacks always running and praying, hoping because they couldn't fight back. They could not protect themselves, their wives or their family, their children or their homes. So they didn't have any guns. So if you're going to practice economic social judo, what you should say is that, hey, I'm not against gun control. Let's everybody have guns. Let's everybody have guns. And said, and right now they got you upside down and backwards, where you're seeing things upside down and backwards. In all these major cities where black folk live, they're going around talking about gun control and having turn in your gun campaigns. But they only have to turn in the gun campaigns for whom? For black folk. In this country, do you know we got something like over 300 million rifles and pistols in this country? Over 300 million rifles and guns. And whites own 99% of them. 99%. That's why in California, I can ride around LA right now and I guarantee you, but still with the Second Amendment to my gun control, I can guarantee you I will not find a gun shop in a black neighborhood. I can guarantee you I would not find a rifle club in a black neighborhood. I'll guarantee you I won't find any black gun manufacturers or bullet manufacturers that are black. Because you see, they got blacks in this campaign about turn in your weapons. Just as it was back 1642. You stay armed and you're harmless. Just like being a black entertainer, now we got you harmless because you don't only care to fight back. Now I'm not advocating all these things for you to go out and shooting about, I'm just telling you. But when you start talking about gun control, that's what they're talking about. But see, they never passed those laws for whites to turn in their guns. And so consequently, you're not prepared to even defend yourself. They said there's only two things that a black person can be in America based on the Constitution. You're either going to be a slave or you're going to be free. But to be free, minimally, black people must have, as former slaves, they must have 40 acres and a mule and $100. And guess what? After that was said, up pops Vice President, he was the Vice President, he became the President then, Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and vetoed it, said you can't do that, you can't give black folk anything because it's against the Constitution, because we got these Negroes locked in box. So he killed the 1865 Civil Rights Law. So what did they do? The congressman came right back and enacted an 1866 Civil Rights Law that says you got to give something to black folk. He came back and vetoed that. So what the congressman did then, they said, well, we'll override that, and this time we're going to take the 1866 Civil Rights Law, we're going to make it the 14th Amendment. And that 14th Amendment was supposed to give you all the protections that you needed. And it's stipulated in the 14th Amendment that black people must be treated in all manners similar to whites. And that every level of government must exercise due diligence in removing and lifting the barriers and burdens of slavery off the backs of black folk. And that the 14th Amendment is written exclusively for black people. And now I know you all don't take this serious, I'm telling you, it's supposed to have been written for black folk. Because you see, the 13th Amendment was already null and void, because the 13th Amendment never freed any slaves. Slavery still exists. The Emancipation Proclamation with Lincoln didn't free not one slave, but all blacks rushed to the Lincoln Memorial. Everybody look around, there's a march to the Lincoln Memorial. Calling him the great emancipator. He didn't emancipate not one black. On top of that, he didn't care about black folk. The only thing Lincoln was interested in was saving the Union. The Slaughterhouse case says in 1870 that the only people who can use the 14th Amendment are black people. And they have to be protected from being further exploited, misused, and excluded, and created as an inferior and subjected race of people. That's the 14th Amendment. Now today, everybody uses the 14th Amendment. Nobody, blacks don't raise Cain about it. Your civil rights leaders don't say anything. Everybody comes to this country using it. Gays use the 14th Amendment. Women use it. All the immigrants use it. Not one black has opened his mouth and said, hold a second, how are you gonna use something set up specifically for us? Now when black folks try to use it, the 14th Amendment is put in place for them, they say, well, you're talking about reverse discrimination. And so then what happened then? So the Supreme Court says, well, we'll end this. So what they did then, they got together and went back and tried it. So the United States Supreme Court then said, we're going to go back to the Dred Scott decision. We're going to nullify every law that was enacted by the Radical Congress. They ruled every one of the civil rights laws as being unconstitutional. First of all, they didn't have the authority to do it. And secondly, it's in violation of the United States Constitution. Because the Constitution does not authorize the Supreme Court to overrule Congress. But they stripped black folk of all that. Then the Supreme Court then went in and said, we're going to narrow everything down to a point where even black folk cannot use the Constitution. So rather than saying that black folk as a group can go and get reparations, they strip you of that right by saying that reparation must be based on an individual basis. That you got to show individual damages as a person. They strip you of the ability to go in as a group because the white justice and the Supreme Court did this intentionally, make sure you could never use it to get reparations for black folk. Nobody's going to talk about you in very specific terms. You all got to start thinking in specific terms about what you want and who you are, what your needs are. And so, but in the 1960s, what happens this? After this black civil rights movement, Nixon got elected to office. And what he said then was this: we got to shift the focus of this country and take it off of black folk. Senator Daniel Moynihan wrote a memo to the president, says, the way you shut down the black power movement in this country, to shut down the black civil rights movement, is to take the focus off of black folk and put it on minority women, children, and immigrants. And then there came a policy called benign neglect. Benign means pretend that something's not really that bad, but you neglect it. And that's the policy you're under right now. You're under a public policy of benign neglect, which means that things are not that bad for black folks, so let's just neglect it. Now, after 50 years after the civil rights movement, it has morphed into what we call now is hateful indifference towards black folk. You've gotten absolutely nothing. So in the 1960s, the black civil rights leaders in this country says, well, if that's the reality, blacks are never going to get anything, let's just give in to the realities of racism. And they joined in with all these various groups. So black leadership in the 1960s and 1970s joined in with the women's groups, the gays groups, the immigrant groups. They signed documents that they would never do anything without including these other groups. That's why you can't find anybody taking up a black cause in this country. You can't get out of the ditch because nobody's going to throw a rope down to pull you out specifically. Nobody. That's not from the White House to the outhouse. Nobody's going to do anything for you. Because they're going to try to pretend that you're a part of a group. And I had to do this under the right to first affirmative action plan in the United States in 1970. I did not write affirmative action for minorities. I didn't write it for poor people, for disadvantaged, for women, for gays, and for midgets, for humpbacks and lesbians. I wrote it for black folk. Affirmative action means corrective action, correcting something that the government did intentionally to a very specific group of people. Nobody's has abused and enslaved women, gays, midgets, humpbacks, and one-legged people. Never did that. But they're now all included in the affirmative action program. And you all have to understand, you start talking about affirmative action, and they started in the 1960s, 1970s. The first affirmative action plan was the United States Constitution. This is what I'm telling you now. You keep this in your mind and write it down. The first affirmative action plan was the Constitution. So when the whites tell you they're against affirmative action, they mean affirmative action for you. The affirmative action, the Constitution is their affirmative action plan. It guarantees that they can get everything they want. By pretending that you don't exist and you're out of it. And after Nixon put out that benign neglect policy, here comes Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan came to office. And Ronald Reagan says, what we're going to do now to make sure these black folk can't get out of this ditch is that we're going to flip the script on them again. Flip the script on them. So he came up with a policy saying, called, never speak. He told all the conservatives, never speak ill of black folk in public. Always speak only about them negatively when you know where you are and who you're with. That's it. And secondly, he says, always put your personal self-interest before justice for black folk. And thirdly, he says that pretend that you flip the script. Use the terms of the civil rights movement against black folk. Use it against them. When black folks started begging for a colorblind society, say, abracadabra, you got it. I put you into a ditch because you were black, but now since we're colorblind, you can't use that blackness to get out. I'm gonna say, do y'all understand what I'm saying to you? So now when they say that you can't use, when they say they want a colorblind society, they're bamboozling you. When I drive a car into a garage, and I park the car go too far in forward gear into the garage, and I park that car on your foot, and put it in neutral, because now I'm gonna be just neutral, not forward, not reverse, I'm just neutral. We're gonna be colorblind. Now that means that car is parked on your foot. For you me to get that car off your foot, I gotta do what? Put it in reverse. But the minute you start talking about doing stuff for black folk, they say that's reverse discrimination. It has to be reversed. Because right now you're going too far in too deep in the forward gear, you gotta now back it up and get it off of me. And so that's why if you go back to that constitutional document, go back to that 14th Amendment, this is what y'all have to remember. It is unconstitutional. Now we're going to start talking about getting out of this ditch. It is unconstitutional for anybody to equate black people to any other group. Right. That's based on the 14th Amendment. It is unconstitutional if we do that. Because the 14th Amendment says that black folk ought to be in a protected class, that they should not be equated to any others, and nobody else to be able to treat them in a negative way or deprive them or reflect on them in a way that suggests inferiority. And the worst thing right now, so anybody right now, black, white, yellow, pink, polka dot, stripes, anything you want, any of them that says that all people are equal and want to treat all people as equal in this country, there are two things that's happening. They're violating you as black folk, and they're violating the Constitution. That you cannot compare black folk with other groups, and nobody else can come in and be compared to black folk. And that's what's happening. All these other people are coming in here, and what the women are doing now, and the gays, they're looking for unearned benefits. Nobody has ever segregated them. And you ask, when did women get deprived? Especially the white women. White women are not a minority. Why would you put them in a minority category? White women are a majority. Women right now have 47% of the nation's jobs, 51% of the population, 64% of all the college degrees, 87% of the wealth. And they got the biggest mortgage and banking company in the United States. When did white women get deprived? They co-own, co-control, co-influence, and inherited 100% of everything that the white man had. But now they're in an affirmative action plan, they're sucking all the strength out of it, and all the wealth out of it. Same thing with gays. When did gays get deprived? Every issue right now is about gay rights. That is not a right. Gayness is a preference. I don't want to know who you want to go to bed and sleep with. That's not my business. That ain't no right that you want to publicize. As far as I'm concerned, you can go back in the closet and lock the door behind you. But right now, gays are getting over by saying, we're just like black folk. No, you're not like black folk. That's a preference. Who you? That's the next thing you're going to do. You're going to get into bestiality. You can be saying, I'm going to marry my dog. That's your private business. But see, and everybody right now is riding off the fact that black folk, there's a void and black folk are not filling it. That's why the immigrants and the gays and the women are getting all the headlines, all the benefits, because you're sitting on your dead butt to let them get away with it. You're not raising cases, so you can't do that. Black folk is a violation of the Constitution and violation of black folk to equate them to black people. But I have not heard not one black stand up and say that and take them back to those documents I just went through with you. And I know most of you all going to throw your notes in the garbage can and leave it. I want you to understand that though. That you cannot do that. So let me close by saying some things. First, what I want you to do. One is I want you to always jump up and go to the media for anything that puts black folk in a very broad, ambiguous category and say we're against it. Okay? For reparations, the way you kill off affirmative action in this country is to go out and publicly announce in the newspaper and radio that black folk, because they're being abused and everybody else is equating you to them, withdraw from the affirmative action program. I wrote the plan. You said we are out of it as black folk. We don't want to be a part of it. You know what would happen? If you pull a withdrawal from the affirmative action plan in this country, the thing would collapse. It would fall down. Why? Because there's no justification for giving special benefits to gays and to women. You flip the script. You use economic judo, social economic judo, to flip it over, and the whole program would collapse. And once it collapsed, then you say, now we're going to go for reparations. Yeah. You go, because that makes you very special again. They cannot claim reparations because nobody's ever done anything to them. Gays can talk about all the benefits they're getting now, but heck, back to slavery, there are all kinds of people I can name that were gay. And some senators and congressmen, some presidents that were gay. As a matter of fact, go down to New Orleans, for example. One of the biggest restaurants and one of the biggest slaveholders in New Orleans were two gay white women. And the restaurant they have is still standing in New Orleans, called the Two Sisters Restaurant. So how does gayness get you all these preferential treatment programs that you want to get into? And so pull out by pulling away from affirmative action, let it collapse. And the Indians, in the first treaties that were initiated in the New York Treaty in 1507, it put in there that Indians would be compensated if they sided with the European whites and helped maintain slavery. We would give you clothes, food, and some weapons, and you can become civilized. That's why you talk about the so-called civilized tribes. The civilized tribes were those Indians who said, we will help you maintain slavery in this country. So Indians became slave traders, slave hunters, slave owners, and they signed with the South in the 1860s to fight with the South to maintain slavery in the United States. And the reason the Indians lost all their territory was because they signed a treaty with the South. And in all those previous treaties, the treaty said if you take up arms against the United States, you would lose all your rights. And when the Indians signed that fight with the South, they lost most of their territory. And the United States said, I'll give you some amnesty if you come back and do this for us. One, you free all the slaves that you were still holding, all the black freemen. Free them. Like the Chickasaw and Choctaw Indians in 1866 were still holding 12,000, 15,000 blacks as slaves. But American troops went into every Indian reservation and made them turn the slaves loose. And said, and when you turn these black slaves loose, these are treaties. You go to your computer and look up the Indian treaties of 1866. And it says this: first of all, you got to give each one $150. You give them 160 acres of land. They got to have access to any resources we send to you. And they have access to any resources on the reservation. They should be tax exempt. They should have free college education. They should be able to go right now in today's terms. You should be able to go to the government and get contracts, just like the Indians do, without competing for it. You should be able to right now to go to the government and says, I want some radio station licenses, some TV licenses, and casino license. You should have gambling casinos if you wanted to, if you get them enforced that treaty of 1866. That is a political issue, which means black folk got to get very active. You are entitled to billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars you never got because you're sleeping. You should be raising Cain saying, we're going to the newspapers, we're going to the radio station, we're going to demand that those 1866 Indian treaties be enforced. Now every year, every December, Obama has invited something like 560 some so-called white Indians to the White House to get benefits. They've been getting an average of about $3.5 billion every year. And I said, what else do you want? This past year they got all these licenses for radio and TV stations. Black folks will be saying we're entitled to those same benefits because in the treaties it says that the black freemen and the black Indians' descendants must be treated in all manners similar to white Indians, or what we call $5 Indians. Whites got on the Dawes rolls by paying $5 to the Dawes Commission. They put their name on the rolls and say they were Indians. That's why 90% of the whites in the world, in this country now claiming they're Indians, are not Indians. They're whites who are just getting unearned benefits again. And you hear people talking about, well, the Hispanics are coming, they're taking their country back. Nobody took the country from them. They got their rear end whipped in the war in 1835. They got and the land, but the United States government still turned around and paid them. They paid them 3 times what the acreage was worth. That's for Texas, Louisiana, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. They got paid for it. And even though they lost, and the government didn't have to give them anything because they lost the war. And they were talking about, well, they call it, well, the Americans, how about the Indians? They get benefits. Indians were not the original people in this country. And all this is in my this new book also I got called Questions You Should Be Asking. Another thing I want you to start doing is withdraw also necessary. Start withdrawing from all these national political parties and start telling them, say, look, if you don't go back and understand all these things in these documents and start standing up for us, we're going to pull out of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Because neither one of you have our interests at heart. Neither one of you are fighting for us. You're not doing a darn thing for us. And what you do when you pull out of it, withdraw like you can withdraw out of affirmative action, you withdraw out of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. And if you want to have power in what I call social economic judo, you pull out and create your own independent party. You create a black independent party. But don't run into candidates. Just say we will vote as a block. That we are 42 million blacks strong in this country. We're going to vote as a block. And once you tell this country that, see, right now they take you for granted in this country. Neither one going to do anything for you. But if 42 million black folk will pull out and be a block of 42 million votes, you can almost dictate who's going to get elected to offices in this country. And then once they find you're going to vote as a block, they will come courting you all the time and say, I'm going to see some of the black folk. I get 42 million votes. And I'm going to do something for them. And what you do whenever a candidate runs for an office, you always ask them, what are you going to do for black folk? Don't tell me what you're going to do for American Indians and for Asians and people of color and minorities. I don't want to hear that crap. What are you going to do for specifically solely for black folk? And demand to know. And if they won't tell you, then tell them to get the world out of your community. So pull out and notify every political candidate and all the political parties that we're going to vote as a block in California on an issue. We're going to stick together. And the next point, play as a team. Always play as a team. You're the only people in the country that have no communities. I can drive down here like Tom Sampson took me last night out here out to Universal Studio. Riding down the expressway, all I see, Tahiti Town, Little Korea Town, Japan Town, Chinatown. I said, where in the hell is Black Town? And he told me, he said, I said, take me to it. He took me down to Central City, and it's called, what was it called? Skid Row. I said, please wake up, black folk. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of black folk not doing right. Just play each other, quit hating each other, hating on each other. Well, I can't get along with him because I never did like that Negro. Who cares? I'm not asking you to make love to them and have babies. I'm saying take care of him, protect him, buy from him, support him. So I want you to learn how to play as a team. Racism is a team sport. You either play as a team or you lose by default. Basketball, football, and baseball are team sports. And black folk are the only one that want to play as a team. I don't want to be your leader, so you don't have to tell people I'm your leader. All I want to be is your advisor and your manager. And see, right now, God sent me here like Noah to advise you. But unfortunately, he put me on the wrong thing because I got a team. I can't even get a team together. I got people that won't come out, they won't practice, they won't rehearse. If I throw the ball to them, they either won't catch it or they do catch it. They'll catch the ball and try to run home. I'm going to keep this damn ball. They see one of their own men running on their side, running with the ball. They'll just try to tackle him. I call them into a huddle like this to get together and plan some strategies. Guess what they do? First thing they run out and tell the newspaper. I know what them Negroes up to, I'm going to tell you. You can't win if you don't play as a team. And if you're going to play as a team, you got to get yourself a decent place where you can meet in quietness. Because otherwise, if you meet in a diverse status, everybody will know your business. Where are your hotels where you can meet? Buy some damn hotels where you can meet in quietness. Always want to do something in public so everybody knows your darn business. Here all got 42 million black folk in 2 hotels in the country. Always want to go to somebody else's restaurant where they can walk around and listen to you say and poison the damn food. I am tired, y'all. I spent my whole life fighting for black folks. Something I said, maybe I went the wrong way myself. Now what last thing I want you to do is build black communities in this city. It might be too late now. And I tell all these people around the country, find an area, like they're trying to do it down there in Freeport, they're trying to do it down in another city in Louisiana, they're trying to do it in Alabama right now. And we're going to try to rebuild some black communities where we can build these factories and industries. Also, we try to set up a major investment group where I need some rich blacks this time, some wealthy blacks. You all did a magnificent job last time of raising money. But again, we lost our oldest building. There was a storm, knocked down the old one, and that knocked out about a third of our production in the seafood factory. And we lost about almost 500,000 fish were killed, and we lost a building that knocked down our production by a third, lost our revenue. And for the last 18 to 19 months, I've just been struggling to hold on to it. But it looks like I'm finally beginning to come out of it again. And if we come out of it, I'm gonna try to find me a couple of blacks with some deep pockets, some big money, and tell them, don't put another diamond in your nose. Just try to help us invest some money so I can rebuild this very factory. And once I build this, we're gonna try to put up some franchise and distributorships out here, and you all can have a chain of black restaurants, just like Black Lobsters or like Red Lobsters or whatever you want. But I love you all. Take care.